All right, and welcome to Nursing News You Can Use at 5. I'm Tina Baxter, your host. Welcome to those of you that are watching on our Facebook pages, Baxter Professional Services, and also on our Nurse Shark Academy page, and those that are watching us on our YouTube channel, or maybe you're on our website at the Nurse Shark Academy. We thank you for tuning in today on this Wednesday, August the 14th, 2024. Let's get started with our affirmation for today. My daily tasks are full of purpose. I deserve success and fulfillment, and I accept them now. My daily tasks are full of purpose. I deserve success and fulfillment, and I accept them now. That's from the Louise Hay calendar. All right. So I have brought back a segment that I loved and missed. And so I decided to bring it back for this season. So I am bringing back the What I Am Reading segment. And boom, we have this from my coach and mentor, Lori Brown. This is her book, Code New. So I'm encouraging you to pick up a copy of her book. And I'll list that in the notes as well. I'll put this in the chat later on so that you'll have access to it. But it's Code New, and this is an excerpt from her book. She says, by the time nurses realize that they are burnt out, it's usually too late. Nurses who are experiencing burnout are exhausted. They have no energy. They feel depressed. They don't want to get up and go to work. Those are the types of problems that a burnout coach can solve. Burnout is a diagnosis, but most people who become victims of burnout are unable to diagnose themselves. We probably all know at least one nurse who is burnt out. The problem you solve will depend on the people you want to serve. So, in other words, who do you want to serve here? And she goes on to say, and she uses the story of the Wizard of Oz, and she goes on to say that when the Scarecrow wanted a brain, the Tin Man needed a heart, and the Lion sought courage. They were unable to achieve their wishes on their own, so they came up with the idea of joining Dorothy and going to ask the wizard to help them. So, what is the problem that you are solving, and how do you prevent the burnout? So, there's more great stuff in her book. Pick up the book from Lori Brown. Lori Brown is a nurse attorney, speaker, and an author, and she is my personal coach. So, pick up her book, Code New. So, I'm excited about that. All right, let's get into the news because there are some things that happen in. So let's go ahead and start off with, you guessed it, Steward Healthcare. Let's get the new update from there. So it says Steward reaches deal to sell Physicians Network to Rural Healthcare Group. Steward Healthcare has reached a deal to sell its 5,000 doctor Physicians Network to Rural Healthcare Group for proposed $245 million, the companies announced Monday night. The sale of Stewardship Health, which operates across 9 states, includes Massachusetts, and serves 400,000 patients, is a major step in Steward's bankruptcy. It still requires approval from a federal judge in Texas. The private for-profit Steward is also working to sell 5 hospitals in Massachusetts, as well as other facilities in other states. Tennessee-based Rural Healthcare Group is owned by the private equity firm Kinderhook Industries, LLC. Kinderhook's portfolio includes other healthcare-related companies, several automotive and light manufacturing companies, recycling and waste services companies, and a pet food company, according to its website. U.S. Senator Elizabeth Warren blasted the deal, writing on X, formerly Twitter, that Massachusetts is already losing 2 hospitals because of private equity's looting of Steward. She was referring to the planned closures of Kearney Hospital in Dorchester and Neshoba Valley Medical Center in Ayer after the company said they did not receive any qualified bids. And so, again, this is something we covered last week, and we'll continue to look at the story and what's happening with Steward Healthcare. But let's go on here. So it says the comment was also a reference to the private equity firm Cerberus Capital Management, which created Steward in 2010 when it struck a deal to purchase a struggling Catholic hospital chain. The company reportedly made $800 million by the time it cashed out of the investment a decade later. Selling Massachusetts doctors to another private equity firm could be a disaster, Warren wrote. We can't make the same mistake again. Regulators must scrutinize the deal. A spokesman for Governor Maura Healey's administration said the state's Health Policy Commission will review the proposed transaction while Stewart pursues approval from federal regulations and the bankruptcy court. Commission Director David Seltz said that the sale can't go through until the state and federal investigators complete their review. The dissolution and bankruptcy of Steward Healthcare has been an unprecedented disruption for communities, patients, and healthcare workers in Massachusetts, Seltz said in a statement. The HPC's rigorous market oversight role is essential. Seltz did not say how long the review might take. He said it will be important to see how this sale relates to deals not yet finalized for the other 5 Steward hospitals. Some creditors are anxious to resolve Stewart's bankruptcy case and recoup as much of the projected $9.2 billion in debt as possible. So we will see what happens. There's more to this story. You can certainly catch up with this, but there's more to this story. We'll keep an eye on what's happening with Steward Healthcare, but this is from WBUR.org. So I wanted to make sure that you knew where to get that source. And we'll continue to follow Steward Healthcare. We'll ride it on to the end to find out what's happening, because this is really a cautionary tale for healthcare. So this is a great case study for us to follow to find out what's happening with healthcare, and there are legitimate concerns when you have private equity entities that come into play, because their goal is for profit, not necessarily good patient care. So we'll keep an eye on that and see what's happened. Okay, here's another story. This came out from NPR, Indiana Public Radio. And it says, after healthcare attacks, tech giants will help small hospitals with cyber defenses. There we go. All right. More devices than ever inside the hospital require an internet connection, everything from MRI machines and health records to heart monitors. The latest and best equipment can speed up and improve patient care, but connection comes with a risk. If you can't afford to protect it, you can't afford to connect it, said Bo Woods, a cybersecurity expert and founder of Stratego Security. Keeping up with the latest cybersecurity tools can be expensive, but it's crucial for hospitals big and small. They've recently become prime targets for malicious hackers because of the valuable patient data that can be sold or held for ransom. These attacks on healthcare organizations can be financially crippling, but the cost can go further. Federal reports and studies show cyber attacks slow doctors' ability to treat patients and can even force hospitals to send patients elsewhere for treatment, delaying care and putting patients' lives at risk during events such as strokes. Cyber attacks against the U.S. healthcare sector has more than doubled between 2022 and 2023, according to Cyber Threat Intelligence Integration Center. In February, a devastating attack on Change Healthcare, a company that processes healthcare payments, wreaked havoc across the U.S. And we covered that story. If you remember, we talked about that as that was unfolding and happening. Pharmacies then couldn't verify and process prescriptions. Doctors weren't able to bill insurers or look up patients' medical histories. Labs were disrupted as well. It was really difficult to navigate during that time. So then in May, a ransomware attack hit Ascension, a Catholic health system with 140 hospitals in at least 10 states. Doctors and nurses working at Ascension reported medication errors and delays in lab results that harmed patient care. On June the 10th, the Biden administration announced some protections meant to tighten cyber security in healthcare. The announcement included a plan for tech companies such as Google and Microsoft to offer various cybersecurity services for free or a discounted price to hospitals that would otherwise could not pay for the latest and best cyber defenses. Properly protecting against a cyber attack could be essentially hard for smaller hospitals. For a couple of reasons, it is expensive, and to find the IT professionals, they have the same kinds of problems with recruiting people to be in the more rural communities, said Bob Olson, president and CEO of Montana Hospital Association. Many high-end cybersecurity tools have been mostly marketed to larger hospital systems and cost at least 6 figures, said Lee Kim, a cybersecurity expert with the Healthcare Information and Management Systems Society. Only recently have IT companies begun marketing these products to mid-sized and small hospitals. And so that does become a problem because Those costs have to come from somewhere. And with rural hospitals being pinched, um, lack of reimbursement, I mean, Medicare and Medicaid are notoriously low reimbursement payers. So it's hard to cough up the money into the six figures to put in cybersecurity, but it has to be done. That's why Kim and other cybersecurity experts believe that the White House recent announcement is a significant and necessary development. Google and Microsoft will offer 1 year of free security assessments and discounts for up to 75% on their cybersecurity tools for small and rural hospitals. He says, Alan Morgan, CEO of the National Rural Health Association, says you're never going to get a level playing field here, but we've got to be able to do at least a bottom tier level of protection to keep our communities safe. Morgan helped broker the deal with the tech giants. While these services are temporary, he thinks that many hospitals will utilize them. Others expressed concern that the offer only lasts for a year without support in the future. Small hospitals could again struggle to pay for adequate cyber defenses. Uh, Stefanovich, um, Amy Stefanovich, who's an expert at the Future of Privacy Forum, says that also would like the federal government to offer more direct help to hospitals after attacks and more assistance with recovery. She predicts cyber attacks will continue to happen at both big and small hospitals because the facility's cyber defense have to be perfect all the time. All the attacker needs to find is one hole. Small hospitals have increasingly become top targets. Logan Health in Kalispell, Montana experienced multiple data breaches and settled a lawsuit after a 2019 hack of hundreds of patients' data. St. Vincent Hospital in Billings, Montana, and St. Patrick in Missoula, Montana have also experienced data breaches. A hospital in Gillette, Wyoming was forced to divert patients to other hospitals in 2019 during a cyber attack because it couldn't properly treat them. And then Bo Woods said attacks like those in Wyoming and other rural areas are dangerous because the next closest hospital could be 30 minutes or more than an hour away. That puts patients with acute and life threatening conditions such as strokes or heart attacks at greater risk of permanent damage to their health or even death. Woods helps lead cyber attack simulations for providers through CyberMed Summit, a nonprofit focused on cybersecurity in the healthcare industry. During a recent simulation, Arman Hussein, a medical resident at George Washington University, practiced what it would be like to treat two patients, one experiencing a stroke and the other a heart attack. During the simulation, Hussein had to treat mannequins standing in for patients. Nurses and other staff members followed a preset script, but Hussein was kept in the dark about what problems he would encounter. In both of the scenarios, our ability to use the computer and some of our ability to use vital monitoring software went away in the middle of the simulation. Hospitals have developed some workarounds for such situations. Doctors and nurses can take manual readings of heart rate and blood pressure instead of relying on networked devices. They can use Messenger to send written orders to the lab or pharmacy. But other tasks, such as getting a lab result or dispensing crucial medications, can be extremely challenging if a hospital processes those through a computer system that's shut down. Not knowing a patient's allergies or being able to access other relevant information from their digital medical files can also lead to medical errors. So every hospital should provide this type of training, Hussein said. After the simulation, they should also create plans for cyber attacks so that patients can get the life-saving care they need. So if you want to read more about this article, please head on over to NPR. It's did a wonderful, great report on this. I encourage you to do that. All right, let's move on to our next story. This one's interesting to me because recently this has been popping up more and more in discussion threads and things like that. So I'm glad that someone finally took a look at this and put this article together. So this is a nurse's advice on how to recognize bogus med spas in Georgia. So it says, looks can be deceiving. You may think a clinic looks legitimate and the staff may look qualified with many credentials advertised. But just because someone in a pretty office is ready to take your money, it doesn't mean that they are qualified to perform real medical procedures. Thanks to scientific advancement in skin care and plastic surgery, a broad array of medical treatments are increasingly available to help people address common cosmetic concerns. People can now easily find neurotoxin injections like Botox and Dysport, that temporarily reduce wrinkles, dermal fillers that add volume, and laser treatments for sun damaged skin. And it could all be done without surgery or much downtime. It's traditionally offered at plastic surgery and dermatology offices. These non surgical aesthetic procedures are increasingly being offered at med spas, a $17 billion industry, according to the American Med Spa Association. However, not every med spa is created equal. For instance, aspiring fitness influencer B. Amin, who advocates for body positivity, went viral earlier this year after experiencing a life threatening flesh eating infection from vitamin B12 and fat dissolving shots at a Los Angeles med spa. This type of infection could result from contaminated vials or unsanitary practices. Her $800 injection resulted in more than 2 years of antibiotic treatments, multiple surgeries, and $2 million in medical debt. And she's not alone. Professional regulatory bodies are increasingly fielding questions and concerns about what safe and legal care should look like at a med spa. So, this is in particular written for the state of Georgia, but these things have come up before because there's another state, and I can't remember which one it was, but there's another state, and there was a concern that you did not have to be a nurse or a doctor to do this. You could be an esthetician and go to like a training, and suddenly you're able to do these med spa things. And so there's where some of those questions were coming up, and who's regulating what, etc. So let's just get back to this article. And I'm glad they provided it because it gives us a great talking point. So those of you that are in this industry, in the med spa industry, if you have comments, let me know because I'm not in that industry. I know some people that are, and I'm just curious to see what that they are in your state if you're what you're allowed to do. So it says in Georgia, a broad range of businesses fall under the med spa umbrella. These include standalone bars that offer vitamin therapy and intravenous hydration drips, Botox and aesthetic studios, and skin health and wellness clinics. A med spa is, by definition, a medical practice, not a spa, said Amy Anderson, a practice management consultant and co founder of Brinson Anderson Consulting. The med in med spa matters. It means that there should be a medical director, qualified clinicians to counsel you, and safety protocols in place. So you need to know who's been trained and what they've been trained in specifically. In Georgia, all clinicians are required to wear an identifier with their name and license when providing health care services. So here's what she's suggesting that you look for. The person you see for the consultation and treatment planning. This should be a physician, a nurse practitioner, or a physician assistant. The medical director. The med spa needs a physician medical director who is overseeing the treatment plans, who has put the protocols in place, and very importantly, who can manage complications. The person who actually performs your treatment. This can be a physician, a nurse practitioner, a PA, or a registered nurse if they have an individualized treatment plan order from a physician. Okay. In addition, it says Georgia maintains a database that can tell you if a clinician's license is in good standing with the state. You can look up nurses and nurse practitioners using the Georgia Board of Nursing online license verification tool. Search physicians and physician assistants through the Georgia Composite Medical Board. So certified does not always mean qualified. In addition to basic credentials, med spas might tout the specialized certifications of the clinicians. However, certification can refer to many things, and identifying legitimate certifications can be challenging. For instance, physicians should be certified by one of the American Board of Medical Specialties. You have a right to ask your clinician what their credentials mean. Always question such titles as advanced master injector or claims of being certified in specific procedures. The treatments offered at med spas are by definition not medically necessary. As a result, insurance plans do not cover med spa services and people pay out of pocket. Without insurance oversight, there's little regulation and few formal checks on billing or safety. Lack of regulation often gives rise to predatory practices. Clinicians may use unregulated or counterfeit drugs or devices that the FDA warns can cause serious harm. Many also do not have a medical director or they employ staff that are unqualified or unlicensed. In instance, qualified licensed people own and operate clinics but engage in profiteering. They may not explore your concerns during the consultation or fail to review your information. So, how can you spot a bad clinic? If the person who counsels or treats you does not know who the medical director is, it could indicate they do not have one. This is a big warning sign. If they are the only place that offers a particular treatment, it might be a bogus treatment. A price much lower than competitors' prices can indicate a fake or watered down product. So, counterfeiting drugs like fake Botox can pose serious health risks, such as the risk of botulism, and life-threatening toxin that can cause paralysis and difficulty breathing. So, Georgia regulators are recognizing the need to act. The Georgia Board of Nursing, the Georgia Composite Medical Board, and the Georgia Board of Pharmacy are collaborating to enhance public safety measures. So, they're looking at some safety protocols. So, some of them are dermal filler injections used to add volume and enhance facial features, carry rare but real risks of blindness and skin death, and vitamin IV therapy treatments can kill you. You need to know that your clinician knows the risks and knows how to treat them and that they know what to do if something bad happens. Ask your clinician what happens if something goes wrong during treatment. Ask them who to call and what to do if you experience a bad reaction after you leave the clinic. And most importantly, listen to your gut. If something seems off, it probably is, so get out. So, this was a great article that was published in WAGC.com News Health. And I would encourage you to kind of dive into that. And there were questions that I have about the industry. And I know some people that do it and they love it. They choose to be in that practice. I know some nurse practitioners who do it. And I'm not saying anything for or against it, but there are some bad actors out there. And you need to make sure that you know the person that is running it and that they have the credentials to do so. All right. Here's another story before we take a brief break. And it says Minnesota defeats lawsuit over COVID era nurse training programs. And this is from Reuters. I wanted to share this because this is really impacts a business. And I just had started my CNA training program this week for our new cohort. I'm very excited about that. Had our first day today. They did a great job. So shout out to the students. All right. So let's get into it. So, as a U.S. judge has dismissed a lawsuit by 9 private training companies that sought to block Minnesota from continuing to provide free state certified nursing assistant programs. U.S. District Judge Nancy Brazel rejected arguments from Twin Cities Safety and other plaintiffs that the state could be sued for restricting competition in the market for private certified nursing assistant programs. Brazel said Minnesota programs were immune from legal challenges brought under U.S. antitrust law. The companies, which charge between $750 and $1,500 for CNA training, said they could not compete with programs that are free. The state spent millions of dollars in the COVID era to fund free training amid a shortage. Brazel said the legal doctrine of state action immunity protection protected Minnesota's regulatory process. The plaintiff's attorney, Eric Cardell, said they plan to appeal the court's ruling. So here's what's happening. The state offered free CNA programs, which, they needed help. I understand that. But it essentially just knocked out these private institutions from having the program. I think if I was the state, what might have been helpful is that if they had provided the funding to the private institutions to run the programs, so that then you don't have small businesses going out of business. That to me would have been a much better way of doing this. So we'll see what's happening with this, and we'll keep an eye on that. All right, and we'll see if things comes back from this appeal. But as a small business owner who's in that industry, it is concerning if the state would suddenly say we're going to offer free to everybody to be CNA training. Well, then who's really going to want to pay for a private program if you can get it for free? So, and the state is like, to me, it would have been much better to keep those people that are operating the program working so that they don't have to close their business. You invest in small business by providing the tuition for these people to go, and oftentimes it probably would get really good treatment, and then you would get the people that are dedicated to coming. So it would be a win-win for everybody, and the government doesn't have to be in the business of training CNAs. They can actually provide those funding for private businesses to do that. So just a thought. So hey, Minnesota, kind of, can you see if you can work that out with them? All right, so we're going to go ahead and take a brief break, and we'll be right back. Bullying, poor staffing, stagnant wages, no work-life balance. Stop being eaten alive. Find your joy, strength, and happiness. Become the leader you are always meant to be. Nurse entrepreneurs are using their skills to launch successful businesses every day. Make your dreams come true. Join the Nurse Shark Academy and come feel the sun at thenurssharkacademy.biz. All right, let's get to our next story here. Okay, let me get to this next story. This is from Oregon. And it says Oregon State Hospital nurses raise safety fears as they work mandatory overtime. Maggie Simpkins, a registered nurse at Oregon State Hospital, talks about her job on Friday, August the 9th, 2024. Nurses are concerned about excessive mandatory overtime and burnout. As a person who worked in a facility that had mandatory overtime, it was a nightmare. And I have to say that was one of the reasons why I ended up leaving that facility, is because the overtime was just too much. After my third double shift in a row, it was just too much. So let's get into it. Her shift is supposed to end at 5 p.m., but most Sundays, Simpkins has to work mandatory overtime, which can stretch until 10 p.m. By the way, Maggie Simpkins starts her work week at 6:30 a.m. on Sundays. That's a long time. 6:30 to 10 p.m. That's a long time. For Simpkins and her colleagues, mandatory overtime has caused a wave of fear and concern about the exhaustion compromising safety of staff and more than 500 patients at the state-run psychiatric hospital in Salem. Oregon's American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, which represents about 300 registered nurses at the hospital, has filed a 225 grievances, filed 225 grievances on their behalf in the last 4 weeks, alleging mandatory overtime violates their labor agreement and the state's nurse staffing law. Toward the end of the shift, I'm more exhausted, and my worry is that the more tired I am, the risk of making an error increases, Simpkins said. It's very scary that when you deal with the mentally ill and making poor judgment calls or medication errors. Fortunately, this has not yet happened, but part of that is because I have a great crew who look out for me. Registered nurses and licensed practical nurses worked more than 2,500 hours of mandatory overtime between June 3rd and August 4th, hospital data shows. Grievances are up as nurses have racked up mandatory overtime. Most months, the union usually files only 2 to 4 grievances on any matter. Amber Showbridge, a spokesperson for Oregon State Hospital, said a combination of factors are driving the mandatory overtime. Those include staff turnover, the national nurse shortage, and increased needs of patients. Showbridge said, additionally, the hospital needs more nursing staff to implement changes after federal inspectors flagged violations. The hospital is looking for ways to recruit more nurses. Yet nurses and their union are unsatisfied amid lingering fears. And as a person that works in mental health, and I remember it happened to be on a psychiatric unit where I was mandated to work overtime. And so they would play this game of, okay, if someone called in and they couldn't find a replacement, it was your turn to be mandated to work overtime. Oh, and by the way, tomorrow you're on call, so you may have to come in and work overtime because you're on call. Oh, guess what? Now the next day you're back up to being mandated to work overtime. Yeah, that got old. And you could never plan your life. You never knew when you were going to go home, and it was very taxing. So David Lynch, president of the Oregon AFSME Local 3295, which represents about 300 nurses at the state hospital, said the increase in grievances and mandatory overtime is a jarring change for nurses. People are calling me and they're crying, said Lynch, also a nurse at the state hospital. They're scared to death that they or their coworker or their patient will be killed. The union says the hospital is violating the state nursing staffing law and contract provisions that limit mandatory overtime. Under its contract, the state hospital cannot require a registered nurse to work more than 48 hours in a work week or more than 12 hours during a 24-hour period. Lynch said the hospital needs more accountability. Once people know this is what happened, they will just be in disbelief. I feel like whoever made that decision, they need to apologize to all the staff, all the patients, all their families, and then give us a detailed plan as to how this is never going to happen again. Showbridge with the hospital declined to comment on whether the hospital's actions violate the contract and state law. In response to 35 grievances filed in July, Angie Johnson, the hospital's director of nursing and staffing, wrote to the union, "We do acknowledge a violation. The hospital, however, denied the grievances, which sought an extra hour of paid leave for every mandated hour." Johnson said that the hospital is making changes, but may not be able to avoid future violations to account for patient and staff safety. Showbridge said the hospital's goal is to bring relief to overworked nurses. They cannot be expected to continue at this pace. About one-fifth of nearly 500 budgeted licensed practical nurses and registered nurse positions at the hospital are vacant. Hospital data shows efforts to recruit include job fairs, relationships with nursing schools, and a mentorship program. 12 temporary agency nurses are currently going through orientation, and another 19 to start work next week. But the hospital has not granted the union's request to end the excessive mandatory overtime and give each nurse an extra hour of paid leave for every hour of mandatory overtime. So we'll see. There's more to the story, but we'll see what's happening. Yeah, I applaud Nurse Simpkins for speaking out. I know that's a very difficult thing to do, but I'm very glad that she's shed light on this because yeah, it's difficult when you're doing those back-to-back doubles. It is no fun, and you get tired, you make more mistakes, and now that added on, if there are mistakes, a medication error can now land you in jail. That's very concerning. Very concerning. But on the other hand, here's a story that is a little bit more on the upside. Senator Schumer secures over $17 million for Bassett Healthcare. This is from WKTV.com. Cooperstown, New York, flanked by hospital staff and local leaders, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, a Democrat from New York, revealed that he helped secure $17,475,512.79. I didn't put the cents on there. In federal COVID relief funding for Baxter Healthcare Network through a provision in the American Rescue Plan. The bill, which passed in 2021, was to help the nation recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. Schumer said the funding will cover costs associated with emergency protective measures and increased staffing, including equipment, medical supplies, and temporary staffing starting in the spring of 2020. But why did the funds take so long to get here? It says FEMA didn't really accurately reimburse the hospitals, Schumer said on Tuesday. They found so many different places where they needed reimbursement, and it took a while to do that and get it done. Stacey Thomas, the president and CEO of Bassett Healthcare Network, praised Schumer for his efforts. Bassett Healthcare Network serves 5,600 square miles of some of the most rural areas in New York State. Our service area is roughly the size of Connecticut. Rural health systems like Bassett are crucial to the vitality of our communities like Cherry Valley, Delhi, Little Falls, and many others who rely on us to care for their needs. We need to make sure that Bassett has the resources it needs to not just survive, but to thrive, said Schumer, who has fought to improve rural health care across the state and nationwide. That means securing this federal funding for Bassett to upgrade its hospital. I will keep fighting so that Bassett can recover and build back stronger, he said. All right, so congratulations. I just thought a little bit of news that they're paying attention and some goods coming out in healthcare. I always like to add the positive in there as well as talk about the negative. All right, so let's go on to our next story. Um, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and hit this one because I'm trying not to be, on this show, I try my best, and on my shows, I try not to be political meaning on the national stage and all of that, and partisan. I don't want to be partisan. But this came through. This is a commentary that came from Medscape, and it had excuse me, it gave me pause. And so I encourage you to go on to Medscape to read this article. I didn't read any of the comments, okay? So I am reacting to this with you. I didn't read the comments because sometimes reading the comments is just disheartening. But this is talking about what Project 2025 would mean for health and healthcare. Now, if you don't know what Project 2025 is, this is a proposal that was submitted from the conservative group, the Heritage Foundation. Okay. So the Heritage Foundation sponsored and developed Project 2025 for the explicit stated purpose of building a conservative victory through policy, personnel, and training with a 180-day game plan after a sympathetic new president of the United States takes office. To date, Project 2025 has not been formally endorsed by any presidential campaign. Okay. All right, so more than 100 conservative organizations are said to be participating. More than 400 conservative scholars and experts have collaborated in authorship of the mandated 40 chapters. So this is a huge thing. I've not read it. Okay, I'm going to tell you, I've not read it. So I'm only telling you what Dr. George Lundberg wrote in this commentary. But this is, some of the things he pulled out, which have been concerns. I have concerns. And you should have concerns. So as a healthcare professional, you should be listening and your ears should be perking up for this. So he pulled out some excerpts from Project 25, and here's one of them. From the moment of conception, every human being possesses inherent dignity and worth, and our humanity does not depend on our age, stage of development, race, or abilities. The Secretary must ensure that all HHS programs and activities are rooted in a deep respect for innocent human life from day one until natural death. Abortion and euthanasia are not health care. Okay. Section 2. Unfortunately, family policies and programs under President Biden's HHS are fraught with agenda items focusing on LGBTQ plus equity, subsidizing single motherhood, disincentivizing work, and penalizing marriage. These policies should be repealed and replaced by policies that support the formation of stable, married, nuclear families. Okay. All right, I understand that point there, but my question then becomes, okay, so if you have a same-sex couple and they either have natural children in some facet or adopt children, do they become a nuclear family if they get married and they're stable? I'm just asking. Okay? Just reading by the definition that's quoted here. Just asking. All right, let's go on. The next administration should guard against regulatory capture of our public health agencies by pharmaceutical companies, insurers, hospital conglomerates, and related economic interests that these agencies are meant to regulate. We must erect robust firewalls to mitigate those obvious financial conflicts of interest. Okay, that all right, that on the surface sounds good. We want to make sure that because I've railed against private equity. I've said, that sometimes we need to take a step back and maybe revamp our medical system because, we should be in the business of healthcare for promoting health, not necessarily And health can be a lot of different things. I understand we should make a profit. Don't get me wrong. I completely agree you should make a profit, but you shouldn't do that at the expense of others or people's lives. So, but I wonder what that means, because then you have to break that down. What is it that they're actually saying? And we don't know, right? I don't have all of it. We don't know. It says all national institutes of health, centers for disease control and prevention, and food and drug administration regulators should be entirely free from private biopharmaceutical funding. In this realm, public private partnerships is a euphemism for agency capture, a thin veneer for corporationism. Funding for agencies and individual government researchers must come directly from the government with robust congressional oversight. Okay? So we'll see what do they exactly mean by that? We're not sure. Because then it comes to this statement: the CDC, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, operates several programs related to vaccine safety, including the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, Vaccine Safety Data Link, and Clinical Immunization Safety Assessment Project. Those functions and their associated funding should be transferred to the FDA, which is responsible for post-market surveillance and evaluation of all other drugs and biological products. So I don't think that would exactly work, because the CDC does a whole lot more, and the FDA just basically says, "Yep, this works. This doesn't work. This we should try. This we shouldn't try." Right? Exactly. But the CDC is actually looking at the emergence of new viruses and biological agents, and um, working on things on a mass scale. So I think that those entities should cooperate, but I don't think you can necessarily place one with the other. That is just my opinion. But this is another thing that they have, because liberal states have now become sanctuaries for abortion tourism. HHS should use every available tool, including the cutting of funds, to ensure that every state reports exactly how many abortions take place within its borders, at what gestational age of the child, for what reason, the mother's state of residence, and by what method. It should also ensure that the statistics are separated by category: spontaneous miscarriage, treatments that incidentally result in the death of the child, such as chemo, stillbirths, and induced abortion. In addition, CDC should require monitoring and reporting for complications due to abortion in every instance of children being born alive after an abortion. Okay. The CDC should immediately end its collection of data on gender identity, which legitimizes the unscientific notion that men can become women and vice versa, and encourages the phenomenon of ever multiplying subjective identities. Okay. Taking a step back, you do realize that a lot of the drugs that are made, tested, etc., don't get tested on women, so we don't know how some of them interact with women's bodies. So identifying with a gender, and I'm talking about a biological woman at this point, because we're talking about the changes, the hormonal changes that happen in biological females, right? This is kind of, yeah. I mean, there's more to this. This is more to this. So I just have a lot of questions on this, and I think that because it impacts healthcare, as a clinician, we need to know what's in here and what may come down the line. Because it's very disturbing on its face. Because again, there's not enough. What do you mean by this? And I really want to know what the agenda is. I mean, I have a sense of what I think it is, but I really want to know what the agenda is here. It says a test developed by a lab in accordance with protocols developed by another lab, but non-commercial sharing. Currently constitutes a new laboratory developed test because the lab in which it was used is different from the initial developing lab, to encourage interlaboratory collaboration and discourage the duplicative test creation and associated regulatory and logistical burdens. The FDA should introduce mechanisms through which laboratory developed tests can be easily shared with other laboratories without the current regulatory burdens. Okay. My question is, why is that a concern? What lab tests are you trying to get through? I just I have questions because, again, it's very vague. It says the FDA should reverse its approval of chemical abortion drugs because the politicized approval process was illegal from the start. The FDA failed to abide by its legal obligations to protect the health, safety, and welfare of girls and women. The FDA should stop promoting or approving mail order abortions in violation of longstanding federal laws that prohibit the mailing and interstate carriage of abortion drugs. And again, this is concerning because there are some drugs like chemotherapy agents that could possibly cause abortion, and there was concerns from the medical community that if you were to prescribe these medications for chemotherapy, would you get in trouble because it could be an abortive agent? I mean, it's just all these things that were happening, and so there was a lot of questions on social media about this, and this is why I bring this up. So there's just a lot. They're going after the NIH Office of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. They're going through Medicare Advantage, making that the default enrollment option. So instead of getting traditional Medicare, you're going to default to Medicare Advantage. Well, a lot of those are run by private equity. So, just, you know, looking at forming a legacy non-MA Medicare, repeal harmful health policies enacted under the Obama and Biden administration, such as the Medicare Shared Savings Program and Inflation Reduction Act. Um, Add work requirements and match Medicaid benefits to beneficiary needs because Medicaid serves as a broad and diverse group of individuals. It should be flexible enough to accommodate different designs for different groups. What does that mean? Who's the different groups? The No Surprises Act should scrap the dispute resolution process in favor of a truth in advertising approach that will protect consumers and free doctors, insurers, and arbitrators from confused and conflicting standards for resolving disputes that the disputing parties can best resolve themselves. Prohibit abortion travel funding, prohibit Planned Parenthood from receiving Medicaid, allocate funding to strategy programs promoting father involvement or terminate parental rights quickly. Eliminate the Head Start program. Support palliative care. Physician-assisted suicide is legal in 10 states. In the District of Columbia, legalizing a physician-assisted suicide is a grave mistake. Eliminates men's preventative service from the Women's Preventative Services mandate. So in December 2021, HRSA updated its women's preventative service standards and guidelines to include male condoms. Prioritize funding for home-based child care, not universal daycare. The Office of the Secretary should eliminate the HHS Reproductive Health Care Access Task Force and install pro-life task force to ensure that all the department's divisions seek to use their authority to promote the life and health of women and their unborn children. The Assistant Secretary of Health and the Surgeon General positions will be combined into 4-star positions with a rank, responsibilities, and authority. Office of Civil Rights should withdraw its health insurance portability and accountability guidance on abortion. So HIPAA. Mm-hmm. These are just some of those things that he pulled out. So I have not read it. I have many, many questions about this. But as a healthcare provider, I'm going to say this. Please register to vote and vote. Okay? I'm not telling you who to vote for. I'm saying that if we don't do something, we may find our hands tied and we won't be able to provide the care that we need to certain people. And that would be a travesty. So I'm sharing that with you. All right, let me get to this one other story before we get to some good stories, because that was heavy and a lot. And we'll have a brief break before we get to that. So Texas sues Biden administration over nursing home staffing rule. Not surprised. We knew it was coming. Texas are suing the Biden administration over a new policy that mandates minimum staffing in nursing homes, arguing that the federal Medicare agency exceeded its authority. In a lawsuit filed Wednesday in the Northern District of Texas, State Attorney General Ken Paxton, Republican, said that the rule should be vacated and the administration should be permanently blocked from enforcing it. This power grab by President Biden's health bureaucrats could put much needed care facilities out of business in some of the most underserved areas of our state, Paxton said in a statement. We're taking the federal government to the court over this rule that could worsen um, conditions. So the complaint argues that Congress has repeatedly refused to change nursing home staffing requirements and that the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid does not have the authority to override what Congress intended. The new requirements remove the historic flexibility of a nursing home to determine what is sufficient to meet the nursing needs of its residents. Instead, the CMS final rule now imposes a one-size-fits-all rule that directly contravenes Congress' stated flexibility directive with rigid and flexible requirements. Okay, wait a minute. Again, I understand that you want flexibility, but when you look at what they're asking, and this is just minimum to have a registered nurse in the building 24/7, and to make sure that each resident on average gets about 3 hours of nursing care time. Maybe it's a little more than three, but let's just make it 3.5. Okay. That's too much. And I think I understand that it's difficult to hire the staff right now, but part of that is because they've worked at bare bones for so long and the reimbursement is so low and they're not getting paid enough. But yeah, it's about 3.5 hours. Okay, we're around 3.5 hours of nursing care per resident per day. That's the minimum. So they're saying that it's going to cost them over 43 billion over the next decade, right? But how much do they make? We looked at this before. How much the nursing home industry makes? Again, I want to make sure we talk about this. I'm going to do it again. Nursing home industry yearly revenue. 126 billion in the United States. That's in 2019. They're talking about costing the industry 43 billion over a decade. But they're making 126 billion in a year. So that's why I'm kind of, yeah, I'm not too sure. So we'll see what happens. We're again, I'm not surprised that Texas is suing because several of the states have talked about doing that. So we'll see what happens. We'll keep you up to date with that. Let's go ahead and take a break, and then we'll come back with some good news. Are you ready for more? My mission is for you to own your seat at the table of nurse entrepreneurship, gaining confidence, skills, and the freedom to live your life on your own terms. Assisting you in achieving your goals through tailored advice, continuous learning, and a collaborative approach is at the heart of everything I do. Stop being eaten alive. Come feel the sun. Be a nurse shark. Okay, so let's get to the last two because I'm actually due to be on a show just now. It's been a busy day here. It's a very busy day today. All right, so let's go ahead and end with this story. And I thought I'd share this story because I thought it was really good, and I wanted to say congratulations to this nurse. We could talk about this next time because I do need to get. I have another event to get to right now. And it says nursing student honored for helping children with cancer prevent mouth sores. This is Great. It's from University Park, Pennsylvania. From Penn State, Ross and Carol Neese, College of Nursing, Doctor of Nursing Practice student Haley Cleveland was awarded the Excellence in Nursing Quality and Safety Award by the Penn State Health Milton S.H. Hershey Medical Center during National Nurses Week in May. The award recognizes Cleveland as an outstanding medical professional and highlights her DNP project investigating how to prevent inflammation of the digestive tract and mouth in pediatric patients with cancer. This inflammation, called mucositis, causes significant painful lesions, ultimately resulting in subsequent poor nutrition, bleeding, and infection. It is common as a result of chemotherapy infusions. So she developed this protocol where you use a low-cost preventing method of placing a cold product such as ice or a popsicle in the mouth for the duration of chemotherapy, shown to prevent cells from absorbing the chemotherapy and dying. So I want to say congratulations to her. She is our nurse making a difference, and what a wonderful difference she is making. Don't forget tomorrow, the 15th at 6 o'clock, we'll be having our nurse business enterprise event that will be exclusively on LinkedIn. So go to our LinkedIn and register for that event. I'm excited with that, with the 1 million women link up for that. And we have a lot of great things coming up for the rest of the week, so and the month. So I'll be posting those things. Keep an eye out on our Facebook pages. And I have to say goodbye for now. All right.